Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. I'm delighted to be joined by GAA fanatic Conor McKenna to run through the weekend's action in both hurling and football. We've seen some big results, obviously, in the All-Ireland Senior Hurling Championship. Clare, a memorable comeback against Wexford, coming from behind in a game where they looked all but beaten going down the home stretch. Galway hanging on for dear life at the end against Cork, and obviously the two Tailteann Cup games as well. Big wins for Westmeath and Cavan. Just a reminder, we're brought to you by Declan Kirby GAA Star, the best children's GAA book out there in the market at the minute. So you can find it on Amazon, Easons, and all good bookshops. So make sure to check that out as well. Conor, how is things with yourself, my man? I mean, I'd imagine you're fairly happy after Westmeath's win yesterday. You won the big derby day, and I'm sure celebrations ongoing in Westmeath headquarters this Monday morning.
Yeah, I was at the 4 games all weekend. I was at the 2 games in Thurles Saturday and 2 in Croke Park yesterday. But I suppose, Aaron, just before we start, it's been a sad enough weekend. So just deepest condolences to Damien Casey and all of his family in Tyrone, and also just on a local frontier, Brian Reedy, a real well-respected man in Mullingar. He passed away yesterday morning. So I think just really sincere condolences to both those families before we start the show.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, I mean, when the news trickled in on Saturday morning, you couldn't believe it, to be perfectly honest. You're almost double checking your phone when you heard the news. So yeah, very much echo what you've said there, like passing on my condolences to the family of Damien Casey, any friends, family, everyone connected at his club, Tyrone GAA as well. Like, I think we've seen, obviously, Tyrone put out a statement, a lot of other GAA county boards put out statements as well. And, you know, I wouldn't have watched too much Tyrone hurling, to be perfectly honest, but from what I've seen, from what I've heard, you know, one of the greatest hurlers ever to come out of the county, great man. You know, I was listening to, I think, one of his club mates on OurGame.ie earlier today as well, and he was speaking quite openly about, you know, obviously the tragedy itself. So, yeah, 100% passing on my condolences as well.
Yeah, and I suppose just going back to the GAA action, it was a brilliant weekend of action. I think the 2 games, I suppose, we'll start in Thurles. So what way do you want to run? Which way we go first?
Yeah, 100%. I suppose we'll start with the Galway game, shall we? Because I mean, it wasn't a great game, to be perfectly honest. Like, I think it was very low scoring in the first half. I don't think either side really played anywhere near their best. I think Galway probably still have another level to go up on. But what were your sort of thoughts on this one?
Well, I think for the first thing I'm going to say is it was the first time in a long, long time I've been at a hurling game where I genuinely felt the team that played better hurling lost, to be honest with you. Do you know, I think Cork were definitely the better team on the day. However, having said that, Galway, they just took the chances that were presented and they were more efficient and they got the win in the end. But I suppose Cork will just have so many regrets, Aaron, about this game. Like, I suppose, like, I'm very, very reluctant to blame any individuals, but I suppose Patrick Collins will want the first goal back. It was, again, he's been a very, very good goalie for Cork. I think it's probably the first error he's made in a Cork jersey, so he's a very good goalie. And then I suppose Cork missed a lot of frees that you'd normally expect and score. They went for goal a few times when the point was on, and I think if Cork had gotten the lead, they would have pushed on and won comfortably. And then I suppose Galway got a few very handy scores from puck outs in the second half as well. So look, Cork would just be very, very disappointed to have lost that game. You know, it was just. But I suppose then Galway, they were more economical. And to be fair to Galway lads, they showed a serious level of character when Grove McInerney went off injured, and he was probably their best defender on the day. So they have a few fine hurlers, Galway. The likes of Conor Whelan is playing very good hurling. I think Cooney there in the freeze is a very good forward too. The 2 Manions are really standing out, the High Burke as well. So they have a good team, Galway, and they have some very good hurlers. And Aina Murphy has developed into a very, very nice goalkeeper for Galway, reliable between the posts. So I think all in all, Galway will be pleased to get the win, but I felt, honestly, the better team lost.
Yeah, I mean, from a Cork perspective, I mean, like they'll definitely be kicking themselves, especially in the first half, with some of those missed chances, and obviously the goalkeeping errors as well. I mean, like, what's your thoughts overall on Cork? I mean, I seen Liam Sheedy there in the Sunday game yesterday. Now, I don't know if he was putting his hat in the ring for a potential job opening there, but he was obviously talking about, you know, Cork having the potential to win an All-Ireland, and, you know, the young players coming through. And I don't think he's wrong, to be fair. Like, I do think there is a lot of room. I know that probably doesn't feel that way for Cork fans right now, but I do think there is room for optimism. Like, there are some great players coming through, And like they're not as far off as some other counties are in Munster and other provinces. So I mean, what would be your thoughts on that? And obviously those comments from Liam Sheedy.
Well, first thing first, I'm going to be very honest here, and Cork fans won't like to hear this, but it was a blessing in disguise Cork losing that game by a point nearly, because I think they would have got a big beating against Limerick in the next round, and I think it wouldn't have done that team any good, a young team, to get in a hiding against Limerick again. They've gotten one last year in the All-Ireland final. They were well off the pace when both sides met in the Munster Championship in 2021, and this year in Páirc Uí Chaoimh they got a bit of a beating off Limerick too. So I think another bad beating would not have been good for that Cork team, to be honest with you. And I think Liam Sheedy, I do think they have potential. They're very well run. Kevin Donovan is a top CEO there in the county. Their team is very well structured. The management team is very well set up. Everything. So the raw material is there in Cork for serious All-Ireland challenge. Now, whether or not it's going to happen or not, I don't know. But I'm not 100% sure to make. But I just honestly think that if they did play Limerick, it wouldn't have been pretty. Now, do I think Galway are going to beat Limerick? No, I don't. But I think Galway, especially if Gerard McInerney was available to play, would have a bit more physical steel and a bit more experience now. So I think they might just compete slightly better with Limerick, but I think Limerick will be in the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, I mean, because it was a strange one from Galway in some, in some respects. Because I remember speaking to some Galway fans sort of after the game and all the rest, and they were even saying, "Look, we're obviously delighted with the victory, we're delighted with the win, but at the same time, we didn't play well, and it's a hard one to judge with Galway because they've had a lot of times this year where they haven't played well and they've sort of come through games and won games. Now that could be a blessing in disguise. Maybe they're saving the best of themselves for the big occasion against Limerick, and maybe out of nowhere they're going to produce a top class performance. But like, it does seem that there is a lot of work for them to do going in against Limerick. But at the same time, is there much pressure really on them and Henry Shefflin? Because it does probably seem like a bit of a free hit in some respects. I mean, everyone's just going to be back in Limerick, really.
Yeah, well, it's a free shot for Galway, and that's black and white, like, really, because there is absolutely no pressure on them. Now, I just take a few things about Galway here. The first thing was, out of the 4 counties in Croke Park, or in Semple Stadium, on Saturday, purely from instinct and judgment alone, just looking at it, it seemed like Galway were the least supported out of the 4. And another thing was, out of the 4 fans, Galway fans appeared to be probably the least optimistic out of the 4. So they were very pleasantly surprised, those Galway fans in attendance, with the results. And another thing is, with the new championship format, like you and I would be around the similar age, but like growing up, we were used to probably not knockout championships, but the one chance and you have 2 chances max, 2 lives, the type of way. Now, what us and older folk will struggle to get our heads around is that the new championship is a total game changer. It's a real round robin series, type of way. So teams really have to be judged on their performance across an entire series as opposed to one isolated game. And I suppose the point I'm trying to make is that Galway played 6 games, 6 or 7 games, I think, 5 in Leinster, 1 Leinster final, so 6 in the Leinster Championship and 1 All-Ireland quarter final. And out of the 7 performances, there was only 1 of them that was probably a bad performance, and that was against Kilkenny in the Leinster final. And even that game, they did miss goal chances. So all in all, Galway are not going too bad. Like, if you play 7 championship games and play well in 6 of them, that's not a bad season. Do you know the type of way? Like, you only, like, it is knockout here from there on in. Now, I don't see them beating Limerick under any circumstances, to be honest with you, Aaron. But I do think that they could give Limerick half a challenge and compete,
Yeah, because the thing is about Galway from watching them this year is I felt like in previous years, maybe they were a bit, over-reliant on the same few players, the likes of your Joe Cannings and whatnot. But it does seem like they're getting a lot more scores from way out the field. I mean, you've obviously Conor Whelan 1-2, Cathal Mannion with 4, Conor Cooney with 4 as well, Jack Cooney with 2 from midfield. So I mean, they're getting a lot of scores from way out the field. And even, Brian Concannon, obviously came off the bench in the first half. He hasn't really been getting much game time this year. So, like, they do have a lot of, options for scores. They aren't too heavily reliant on 1 or 2 players. And I think maybe that could stand to them going in against Limerick.
Yeah, I think that probably a comparable situation with Galway might be the Donegal footballers, because they've won, both teams have won 1 All-Ireland each. And I suppose the point I was going to make was that Donegal have probably built a game plan that's very reliant on Michael Murphy. And for years, Galway were probably very reliant on Joe Canning. The year he was injured in 2019, they came forward in the group stage in the Leinster Championship, And I think the fact Canning has gone means Galway suddenly have to try and adapt to a new new system, new players, new talisman, etc., etc. But they've won a lot of All-Ireland minors, have a few underage success. So therefore, logic would suggest there are players coming through within the county, But they'd probably a bit to be bright about for Galway from a Galway perspective,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think there's definitely room for optimism going into that game against Limerick. Although I think we would all agree that I think Limerick are serious favourites for that one. Make no mistake about that. I suppose from a Cork perspective, I mean, we were touching on them there. I mean, what would be your thoughts on Kieran Kingston? I mean, he's obviously 3 years in charge there. Didn't work out too well in his first year. Second year, he obviously gets Cork to an All Ireland final. A bit of adversity, sort of at the end of the league. Started a championship, came through that, got themselves to a quarter final, played well enough, as you said, against Galway. It's a hard one to judge, really, because, I mean, what do you reckon? Does Kingston stay on? Do you think he'll stay on, or do you think maybe Cork might be looking for a bit of a change?
But the first thing about Kieran Kingston is he's a total gentleman, and he's one person that I genuinely haven't ever heard anyone say a bad word about. And he's probably the only inter-county manager you could nearly say that about across Ireland or football. He's a total top class person, and he's got one thing that's very hard to get is respect. I think he's got real respect of all the players and anyone involved in Cork circles. And I think his 3-year term is up on paper. I think his 3-year term that was initially agreed. It has completed. Look, I'd say it'll be his own decision, Aaron, purely whether he goes for it again or not. I think he'll definitely be left to his own devices to make his own mind up whether he goes for another term or not. He might feel burnt out. He might feel he's taking the team as far as he can, or he might think that they have unfinished potential. Like, he's managed Cork for 5 years between 2 different spells, and so he might like to think that he deserved maybe an Ireland out that, because he's won Munster Championship with Cork in 2018, but he might like to think that he'd like to take an Ireland title if possible. And whatever is best for Cork hurling, I don't know, but I think he's definitely done enough with it as Cork and given enough service with coaching and management to be able to make his own decision whether he stays or goes.
And I was thinking as well, like, I was kind of thinking this when I was on the way home. I was kind of thinking, like, has it been a good season for Cork, or has it been a bad season? I mean, I don't think you classify it as a good season when you look at the history of Cork hurling in terms of winning All Irelands. They've obviously been a long way away since obviously ending that drought, but at the same time, it's not a bad season though, really, is it? Because I mean, they started quite poorly, they recovered quite well, they come up against a very decent Galway side. So what would be your take on that?
I'd say maybe a 5 out of 10 season. It wouldn't be a failure of a season, but I don't think it's been good either. I don't know. Like, I don't think we could argue they've made serious progress this season by any stretch. And are they any closer to Limerick at full pads? I don't know. I don't think so, as a purely personal, honest opinion. But I suppose they knocked Waterford out with Championship in Walsh Park away from home. They got to a league final, flattered to deceive in the league final. And I think if they had beaten Galway, then they probably would have knocked out all the bigger teams out in the Championship in the last 2 seasons, with the exception of Wexford and Limerick. So that would have been a big take, because they've knocked out Tipperary, Waterford, Clare, Dublin and Kilkenny over the last 2 seasons out of the championship entirely, So I think it's been an okay season for Cork, but I think there is definitely room for improvement,
Absolutely. And then in the second game on the Saturday was Clare 124, Wexford 314. I mean, at one stage you were really looking like it was going to be the Yellow Bellies who were going to progress here. I mean, there were 6 points up going into the final 10 minutes. Clare really hadn't got going at all. They looked leggy. They looked sort of almost mentally hungover in some respects from that Limerick game, obviously in the Munster final. But I suppose the sign of a great team, sign of a top team, really, to turn it around in the way that they did. I know maybe they got a little bit of luck with the goal, but at the same time, you have to credit them a huge turnaround, and in the end, winning it quite comfortably.
I want to say 2 things. I think the first thing is, I think the better team won this match. Definitely, I think that the goal came in after 20, 14 seconds, whatever it was. Very, very quick goal, similar maybe to the first game. And then Wexford kind of stunned Clare with 2 quick fire goals at the time when Clare had begun to get on top. Second thing is, I think Wexford were incredible in their battle and defiance and skill level, because I think when after Rory O'Connor went off, it would have been easy for Wexford to throw in the towel, but they didn't. And I think, to be fair to Wexford as a county, the standard of hurling a club, it probably isn't the same as maybe a lot of the other top counties. But I think Wexford, to be fair, really do punch above their weight in hurling. They're always kind of thereabouts and putting in, being hard to beat, and always capable of taking a scalp. They have some very nice hurlers in their prime as well. But I think after Rory O'Connor went, I thought Clare should definitely have pushed on and won the match, which they did in the end. Clare made hard work, but then there was a Munster final hangover, I suppose is the word to use. They had put in a savage effort into beating Limerick. It was a banana skin of a game for Clare. And look, I'd say, if you had said to them that they come out with a 4-point win, they probably would have taken it without being thrilled, but I think they'd be taking it. I'd say Brian Lohan would be pleased enough with how the game went,
Yeah, because it was an interesting game. I mean, I thought Tony Kelly was fairly quiet for large parts of the game. I didn't know if he was nursing an injury or sort of what was going on with him. Duggan was fairly quiet as well, but like, you have to credit the bench. I mean, Aaron Shanahan coming off the bench, scoring 1-2, Shane Meehan with 2 points as well. I mean, Clare, maybe in the past probably haven't had massive depth in their squad, but I think you're seeing this year, I mean, they're getting players off the bench. When you're getting lads coming on, scoring 1-2, especially in the final 10 minutes, when you really need them to step up, I mean, that could be key for Clare really going in against the Cats in a few weeks' time.
Yeah, well, I think Clare, that's what Brian Lohan has done very, very well over the last 3 years. I'll give him a lot of credit. Is he's developed two things. He developed the panel of Clare, a bit of depth in the panel, which mightn't have been there. And also, he's developed the individual players. He's certainly improved the players at his disposal an awful lot. So I think he's done a super job across 3 years, has Brian Lohan. I think he's definitely the right man for Clare going forward in the longer term. And I think that I'd love to see them get to the All-Ireland final for Lohan. I think he's a real top person, and genuinely think he's done a smashing job, and Clare hurling fans can be very, very optimistic. In my opinion, considering the resources at their disposal, they're the best dual county in Ireland, Clare, between both coasts. They really do punch above their weight in hurling and football,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, especially after obviously what they done in football as well, with that memorable win over Roscommon. What do you think it was then that sort of led Clare in this turnaround or in this comeback? Because as you said, like Wexford, it has been a great season for them. I think you would have to say that. I mean, I remember watching them against Dublin, and when they lost that game, and obviously drew at Westmeath as well, you were probably a little bit worried for them, really. And the fact that they beat Kilkenny and then put in as good a performance as this against Clare as well, like definitely a lot of room for optimism for Darragh Egan's men. But what do you think it was? Did Wexford just run out of energy, run out of steam? Did Clare just sort of stand up to the occasion, or what do you reckon?
Well, I think with Wexford, I suppose just the first thing with the Westmeath game, I was at that game, they were very poor that night because Westmeath didn't even play that well. Westmeath probably nearly played better against Kilkenny in the first game, and arguably played better against Dublin in the third game, and definitely played better, I'd say, in round 5 against Laois, winning that game by 18 points. So Westmeath were a bit flat against Westford, and they hit a lot of wides, and still Westmeath managed to salvage a point. So I think after that game, look, Wexford were still technically in the championship, but it seemed to many they were in the championship in name only, and they were going to Nolan Park. They weren't going to win that game. They were going to be knocked out. But to be fair to Darragh Egan and the Wexford players, they showed incredible courage to win in Nolan Park, and they backed it up. They were unlucky not to get to the Leinster final after beating Kilkenny, and they backed it up with a super performance down in Tralee against Kerry, putting the game away early, leaving nothing to chance, and then they put up a very good display against Clare as well. So I think Darragh Egan is continuing the progress that Wexford made with Davy Fitzgerald over 5 seasons. And I think Wexford are in very, very good hands with Egan and his management team. They're a good county. They always seem to have as well, Aaron. They always seem to have a few players coming through. They've consistently got good underage teams. They're not winning all Ireland's at minor under 21, but they're producing good players every year. There's always competitive, and that's always the main thing. So I think Wexford, they're going nowhere, and Wexford fans again can be relatively optimistic,
Yeah, I mean, and as for Clare, I mean, as we were saying there, obviously massive turnaround at the death. But how would you fancy them going in against Kilkenny? I mean, it'd be a tough game in many ways. It's a hard one to call, really, because Kilkenny are sort of they're a strange team. Like, they can turn up really when you least expect it, and we all know the quality of them. And what do you think? Could Clare pull through that one?
Well, how many times have we gone through things, put everything on paper, gone through and say Kilkenny aren't going to win this, and how many times have they won, type of way? So yeah. I'm not going to make, only a fool makes the same mistake twice. There's absolutely no way I'm going to predict against Kilkenny. I'm not going to sit in defence either, but I'm just going to make a point about Kilkenny just before, if I have a chance. Just look at the Kilkenny team, go through them. Like, Owen Murphy is arguably the best goalie in Ireland, if not, I'd say he's definitely in the top 2 along with Nicky Quaid. Brilliant goalie. The defence Kilkenny have is very, very good. Like, Conor Whelan played well every game. He was probably lost the battle against Kilkenny in the Leinster final. It was the one team that did manage to keep them quiet, So I'd say Kilkenny defence is on a par with any team in Ireland, including Limerick, nearly at that stage. The midfield is not bad for Kilkenny. They're big lads. Midfield can win a bit of ball, and the forwards they have. People say they haven't got forwards. I wouldn't mind having TJ Reid in a team. A big, huge fella can win ball, and like the bench. A lot of the Kilkenny does on the bench, the likes of Walter Walsh, these guys coming on. Kilkenny have built a good bench, so I think that it's been a myth, maybe, to say Kilkenny haven't got good players, because they certainly have good players, and they have as good players as any other county has, and I give them definitely more than a fighter chance of beating Clare, and in fact I'd have it very, very 50-50, to be honest,
Yeah, I think a lot of people overlook Kilkenny, really, because what they achieved in the past, and because of the team that they had, and we look at this Kilkenny side, and it's almost like we try compare them to the great Kilkenny team and think, oh, well, sure, they're not that great Kilkenny team, and I think we'd all agree that they aren't, but at the same time they've got some quality hurlers all around the field, and they're bringing through some young players as well, like a lot of young lads coming through the ranks there as well,
But just to copy what I said with Galway, Kilkenny have played 7 championship matches too, or 6, sorry. They played 5 in Leinster, as well as the final. So 6. They played bad in one of them. So again, like, they didn't play bad losing in Salt Hill that game. They actually played well and could have drew it Galway, type of way. So Kilkenny have not, and like Westmeath played absolutely out of their skin in the first half against, and Kilkenny still won by 16 points. Like, they hockeyed Laois. They played Dublin away in Parnell. Bananski won by 17. They played well in Salt Hill. They lost to Wexford. Okay, fair enough. Kilkenny might have thought they were already through, even though they weren't already through. And then they played well in the Leinster final, winning. So they really, over the last 3, they've won 3 Leinsters in a row. They won the league last year. Granted, there was no league final, but they still were the winners. They came top of the group. They came top of the group this year. Lost narrowly to Cork in Portuguese semi-final. I am going to say Kilkenny are definitely a top 3 team in Ireland consistently over the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years, whatever you want to call it. Kilkenny are not gone away at all.
Yeah, I suppose we'll move on to the Tailteann Cup games. Obviously, at the weekend, it was Cavan 20 points, Sligo 114, Westmeath 322, Offaly 216. I mean, what has been your sort of thoughts on the Tailteann Cup in general? I suppose, like, I remember you were saying before that you did have reservations about it, and you certainly weren't convinced by it. And I think a lot of us really sort of did have a lot of issues with it. But what would be your thoughts now? I mean, it's starting to really come full circle. I think the Sunday games coverage was very, very good on Sunday in more ways than one. And I think 2 cracking games. And really, when you look at a lot of the games in the Tailteann Cup, there haven't been too many games really that have been low scoring or have been disappointing anyways.
Well, I'm just going to say 2 things. The first thing is, I was in the Tailteann Cup game yesterday. It was a brilliant occasion. It was a great game, 2 great games of football. The Tailteann Cup has done very, very well so far. The coverage has been top class. That only anyone can. There's been very, very few faults, if any, with it. The second thing is, it's only year 1. There is still, like, an awful lot can happen. I remember the Christie Ring was meant to be sold as the next big, huge competition. It was going to be great. Year 1, brilliant. Westmeath beat down. It was a great game of hurling in Croke Park. After that, it didn't. It was gone. The competition hardly lasted the second year, though. I think Antrim hammered Carlow in the final. It was on telly. And after that, I don't know, was it on telly? I think Westmeath beat Kildare the year after. But anyway, it just went down in significance every year. Now the Christie Ring is 3rd-tier competition nearly. The don't have to replace it. But I just think that the Tailteann Cup, the format next year is being tweaked. It's going to be for the worst, in my opinion, because they're going to have group stages. There could be dead rubber Tailteann Cup games that won't maybe generate as much excitement as they can, with 3 teams getting 4 out of 4 getting through in the group. So it's an awful pity this format isn't continuing in the Tailteann Cup next year. Because the format here seems to work very well. Maybe they could scrap the regional matches, but all in all, it was a great occasion yesterday in Croke Park. Now, again, the only thing is, the draw was it was good for the GAA because Westmeath Offaly was a local derby and it was always going to be a bit of interest, type of way. So Westmeath and Offaly fans probably really got interested. If it was a different draw, would it have generated the same interest? I'm not 100% convinced, but that's not the GAA's fault. It's not anyone's fault. So fair play to it so far. It's been a great success. And I think the final, the 2 best teams in the competition are definitely going to be in the final.
Yeah, I mean, what was the buzz like in Westmeath after a huge victory like that? As you said before, I mean, big rivals between the two, and to put out an emphatic performance like that, scoring 322. I mean, I'd imagine I'm sure a lot of you probably woke up with sore heads this morning, but at the same time, it's probably well worth it.
Well, I think just to go along in that, like Westmeath, I'd say it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say it was one of Westmeath's best ever championship performances. They played very, very well. They won by 9 points, could have won by a good bit more. There was no doubt they were going to lose that game. It looked like Westmeath were streets ahead of the opposition, to be honest with you, on the day. And like, it was a great result for Jack Cooney. He's put in savage work in Westmeath. He's a top man. Jack Cooney is. He's probably a bit like Brian Lohan and Clare, I suppose, when he was such an iconic player for Westmeath, and now he's done a brilliant job as a manager. His heart is definitely in the right place. They're playing very attractive football as well and making great progress. Mickey Graham is the same in Cavan. The 2 of them are similar type of people. The 2 of them are very good footballers for the county and now doing very good job as managers. And I think the Tailteann Cup would be a nice success to maybe bring home for Jack Cooney, because they won a Division 3 title in 2019 and the O'Byrne Cup. So a Tailteann Cup, a championship, lifting championship trophy along with that would mark a very, very successful tenure. If he stays on next year, which seems to be almost certain, he'll become the longest serving Westmeath manager in their entire history, having done 5 years. And certainly that'll be, nobody in Westmeath will begrudge that at all,
Yeah, like, because you know what, like with Westmeath, they're the type, because I was going to ask you, like, where do you think Westmeath rank in terms of, like, are they sort of middle of the road Division 2 side in your opinion, a little bit better than that, maybe a little bit, below that kind of? Because I was thinking, like, this isn't the first time Westmeath have put up a big score against a team in a game where it should have been closer. Like, think back to Laois last year when they beat them by 15 points, and they were actually trailing, I think, by half time. So, I mean, like Westmeath seem to have these big performances in them, like the same against Cork. I remember watching them in that game, in the relegation playoff last year, and I thought they played some of the best football I'd seen all year, no joke. But at the same time, like the consistency levels just doesn't seem to be quite there. And they do seem to have some underwhelming performances at times. Like, what would be your take on Westmeath as a whole, or where would you put them, I suppose, in the football league pyramid, shall we say?
Well, I suppose just Westmeath have had 12 games this year in Championship, and they've won, like, I'd say a bit like Kilkenny and Galway. They've only had one bad performance, and that was at home to Longford in the league, where they lost at home, and they were terrible that day. But they lost another game to Louth away. They were unlucky enough to lose that game. Louth were hard to beat in RD, and then they drew it for Fermanagh at home. But again, Fermanagh played well. There was, again, Westmeath could have won the game. They might miss. I think they missed a good goal chance towards the end. So Westmeath they have played well all year. They played very well against Longford in Championship. They were unlucky enough. They played well enough against Kildare despite losing by 3 points, and then they played the two performances in the first two Tailteann Cup games weren't great, but they were hard enough matches away at Laois and Carlow, and they got out with a win. So, and then yesterday probably was the best performance of the season. So, in the Westmeath, Limerick got promoted ahead, and Westmeath beat Limerick quite comfortably down in Gaelic ground. They played well. Westmeath, probably Limerick, maybe around the same level. You know, the type where Westmeath could be a Division 2 team, but they're not. But I suppose if Westmeath were in the All Ireland quarter final this weekend and they had drawn Cork or Clare, you'd probably think that they could have a chance of winning as well. So they're not that far off, and the same goes for Cavan. You know, type of way. So Westmeath, they're probably good enough to just be a Division 2 team, I think, for definite.
Yeah, I mean, and as you were saying, I mean, because you have because the thing about Westmeath as well is you have so many options for scores. Even like John Heslin hit 7, and we all know the quality that he has. But Ronan O'Teal's always been a player that I've been impressed with since he sort of burst on the scene last year. I mean, very skillful player, great ball carrier. He kicked 5. Luke Loughlin's obviously come back into the fold, kicking 2 points as well. Lorcan Dolan with 2-1. So, I mean, and Ray Connellan around the middle, very, very good midfielder. So, you've a wealth of options. Maybe is defensive, is the defense maybe a bit of an issue? Because the way I'd look at it and think, Offaly didn't play well, in my opinion. It took them around 20 minutes to get their first score. They still finished with 2-16. So could that be a worry for Westmeath? Maybe I suppose, is the defense.
No, I wouldn't be too concerned with the defence, really. I think that Offaly was an open game of football. It was in Crook. Both teams played very open football, but I wouldn't be overly worried about Westmeath in defence. I think Offaly in the first half yesterday were very, very poor. I thought they'd be an awful lot better, and even the goal that came completely against the run of play, and Westmeath kind of went to sleep for a minute. So I don't think the 9-point winning margin flattered Westmeath in the slightest, to be honest with you. But Offaly, I thought that they might they've had 2 very bad results this year. I suppose the first one was losing away to Wexford. They should be a lot better. Wexford came very near the bottom of Division 4, the kind of way, and that's not taken away from Wexford. But Offaly, they struggled to beat them in the corresponding rematch in the Tailteann Cup, and then they beat Wicklow in New York. I don't think anyone would be getting over carried away about beating New York, to be honest. I just think yesterday was a very bad result for them. Getting a bit of a beating yesterday and losing to Wexford is 2 very poor championship results, really, to be honest. And I think Offaly fans would be very, very disappointed, because there is a bit of football. There are footballers in the county. They won All Ireland under 20 last year. But look, I think John Mahan had made it. To be fair to Mahan, a lot of people are giving him a lot of criticism. But before this year, he had taken them from a very poor Division 3 team to a Division 2 team, and quite enough to stay up. So I think as a whole, Mahan has done a good job across the 4 years, to be honest, to be fair to him,
Yeah, we'll just run through some comments here. Gavin says, funny how Westmeath versus Offaly was expected to be tight and not Cavan v Sligo, but the opposite happened. Yeah, it's funny how it can work sometimes. Sir Klopp says, hi Aaron and Connor, Tailteann's Cup been a great success in my view. The inaugural year is never perfect, but the football has more than made up for it. John Donnelly says Offaly get battered everywhere they go. Sir Klopp also says the group stage is the right way to go for next year, but 3 promotions instead of 2 could mean more dead rubbers, like Connor said, something that should be avoided. And there should be more incentives, both finalists getting boys into the final round of the qualifiers, the following year. I do believe the winner of Cavan Westmeath do get a boy into the qualifiers next year, isn't it?
Yeah, I think 95% sure that it's hard enough.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I heard that as well. Yeah,
it's hard enough. The format hasn't been. I think everything has been rubber stamped, but I don't know. They probably should find out. But I think they do get into the group stage as 4th seeds minimum. And I suppose if they were to do well in the league or do well in championship, get to provincial final, they'd be higher up seed, type of way. But look, sure, as a whole, it's the Tailteann Cup has been a success, and Cavan Westmeath, either of those teams that win it will feel that I don't think anyone would be disappointed to win it. I think they're actually about the players would be delighted, Like Cavan, probably the difference between Cavan and Westmeath is 99% of those Cavan players have won provincial success with the All-Ireland or Ulster title, which was a serious achievement for Cavan. The Ulster was a real Ulster championship. Probably, to be honest with you, Aaron, the 2020 and 2021 Ulster championship were probably the two most prestigious on the basis that the loser of each game was knocked out of the competition. There was no qualifiers, So Cavan really won a proper, fair, no asterisks at all Ulster championship. They're a really good team. Like Westmeath haven't done that. They haven't won anything like that. Now, to be fair, Cavan probably wouldn't have won an Leinster title. Like only anyone in Cavan is going to say that they would have. But Cavan probably are a more experienced team than Westmeath, and unfortunately, as much as parents say at the moment, if a gun was put to my head, I'd probably edge towards Cavan to win the title at the moment.
Yeah, and I suppose from an Offaly perspective, I mean, you mentioned there the talent that's in the panel, and we've obviously seen Jack Bryant come in, Keith O'Neill as well, like 2 under-20 lads coming in, plenty of under-20 players coming through the ranks. They do obviously have injuries. Noel Darby, I think he's actually retired from what I've heard after tearing his ACL in training in the build-up to this game. But obviously Cian Farrell's away with an injury as well. So there is still room for optimism for Offaly, isn't there? Like there's still a lot of good players coming through. And you think in Division 3 next year, I mean, I think it'll be tough for them to get out of Division 3, I think, but I think they will be up there or thereabouts. Now, I don't know if John Maughan's staying. I've seen a quote going around there that he might not be staying, so we'll obviously have to wait and see what happens with him. But generally speaking, I do think there's still a lot of room for optimism for Offaly.
Yeah, but I suppose the only thing with Offaly, they're going to be in Division 3 next year, but like two things will happen. They'll either push on and improve and they can have a real chance of getting promoted. But again, like, the way they played yesterday, like even allowing for injuries, absentees, etc., that performance, if they replicated, they could be good down in Division 4 either. Do you know what type of way? Like it wouldn't be.
I think so, yeah.
Well, like just the fact it could be Cavan in there next year, Westmeath down could maybe get a bit of resurgence. Like it's not going to be that straightforward Division 3. Like so if Offaly really, if they didn't really maybe get like the fact they've lost to Wexford, who came 6th in Division 4, and lost to Westmeath, and like if they didn't, like, I don't think that will happen. I think that they'll probably regroup a bit next year and they will get a bit back and they'll probably make a serious amount of promotion. But like they can't, like Westmeath went down to Division 3 and then that happened. People say, oh, Westmeath will come straight back up. They went down to Division 4.
Yeah.
Same thing happened with Derry. Like, it wouldn't be a miracle either. Cavan, same thing happened when they went down to Division 3. People said they'll come back up. Like, if you're not focused, I often think we'll get out of Division 3, it'll be a cakewalk and we'll pull in for championship. And then suddenly you're ambushed, and suddenly then before you know it, you're in the bottom of relegation playoff when you haven't done the hard work early in the season, and then you lose and then you're relegated. So like it wouldn't be like, I don't know, it's hard to know like really. But Westmeath, I suppose their short-term target should be to win the Tailteann Cup, absolutely certainty target over the next 3 weeks, and then I suppose maybe the more medium-term target should be to get promoted out of Division 3 next year and try and become a sustainable second tier county with hopefully, and I suppose a bit like Clare, if things go right, it could maybe get a chance of getting promoted to Division 1, which would be huge for Westmeath,
Yeah, I mean, you see a lot of the time as well. Like you see, obviously Laois, for example. I mean, they started Division 3 quite well. Like I think they won their opening game, drew the second game out, and then lost, all the remaining games, and ended up getting relegated. So you can see this sometimes. Sometimes that can happen. You can go on a bit of a bad run, bit of bad form. But as you were saying there, as we were saying, Cavan 20 points, Sligo 114. I have to say, like, I mean, I didn't watch the games live, but I watched this game in full back this morning. And I was amazed, like Sligo had so many goal chances, so many opportunities. He had 2 chances cleared off the line. Another chance, I think, when it was O'Connor who was running through. And I mean, all he had to do was hand pass it off to the man beside him. And I think it would have ended up in a goal. But I mean, what were your thoughts on this one?
Well, I thought Sligo played very, very well. They're probably their best performance this season because their 4 championship performances to date have been a very narrow win in New York. It was a bit of a beating against Roscommon in the semi-final in Connacht. They were down a man for most of the match. And then the quarter-final against or the first round against Leitrim in the Tailteann Cup, or against London, they think they won that very narrowly. And likewise for the Leitrim match, they were very fortunate to beat Leitrim. So I didn't know where Sligo going brilliantly. They didn't play excellent in the league, but they really, really did produce a performance here. And Tony Mack was very, very proud of those players. And Cavan played well. I thought both teams played well. Both teams missed a lot of goal chances. Sligo could have won. Did the better team win? Probably did win, to be fair. I think Cavan were the better team on the day, but Sligo would be very, very disappointed. They will see it as a golden opportunity to get to a national final in Croke Park. But I think overall Sligo will take a lot of positive. And a bit like Westmeath, Sligo need to focus purely next year on getting out of Division 4. And then when you get out of Division 4, after you do that, you can make a case then about maybe we'll try and win the Tailteann Cup, or get to a conference final, take a scalp, whatever their medium-term target is, While Cavan, on the other hand, they'll see themselves very much as wanting to win the Tailteann Cup. And then, but sure, someone said to me earlier, a good point, Cavan could easily have won the Ulster Championship this year. They could have beaten Donegal that semi-final, and they would have fancied themselves against Derry in a final. So they're still not a million miles away off winning an Ulster Championship, So I think Cavan will, Division 3 next year will be very, very competitive. Cavan, Westmeath, Offaly, Down, Fermanagh, all those counties will be genuinely targeting promotion. Do you know that type of way? So that Cavan Westmeath, the final does promise to be a cracker. And I think Cavan Grove McKieran is a very good footballer in the forward. I think Killian Clark was making his 100 appearance yesterday, had a good enough game. The cornerback of Cavan was very good too. The Galligans had a good game. Cavan, they have a few very nice footballers, and they'll be very hard beaten in the final,
Yeah, I mean, Grove McKiernan obviously kicking 5 points, but obviously our mutual friend in John McMahon, I don't know if he's watching, shout out to him, but he was obviously a big fan of Jason McLaughlin's performance, obviously at cornerback. And what's interesting with Cavan as well is Paddy Lynch kicks a point, obviously a tremendous job from Evan Lyons, the fullback for Sligo. But the thing is with Cavan is they're kicking double digits in a lot of their games in terms of points. They're not getting that many goals, but they still feel like they're another level to go up on. If you can get an extra couple of scores out of Paddy Lynch going into that Westmeath game, it's I'm not going to lie. I have family from Westmeath. I'd love to see Westmeath pull through, but to be honest with you, I think Cavan might sneak it.
Yeah, no, I think I'm not going to disagree. No, hopefully Westmeath, but I'd love to see it. But I'd say it's very, very tight. It's really 50-50. I think if you were going to go anything, it would be 52-48 or 51-49, maybe slightly in Cavan's area. But it's very, very, Westmeath have a real fighter chance, though, on the other hand, but both teams are actually going to have a lot of experience playing in Croke Park, like Westmeath and Cavan both are there umpteen times now. I suppose the difference is Cavan have experience of playing of a really big occasion in Croke Park with the 2020 All-Ireland semi-final. I suppose the asterisk to that one is it was behind closed doors. So they haven't maybe got the intensity of a huge crowd. But then Cavan, they played in an Ulster final in Clonus in 2019, which was a big crowd. So they have played bigger occasions. Westmeath played Dublin, but 2016, 2015, it's still 6 years ago. It's a long time ago. Do you know the type of way? Westmeath, while it's a lot of the same players, I suppose they have experience playing the big games too, but it'll be a very, very good occasion. And I'd say both fans, the 4 counties that's going to be involved, it'll be 2 of Derry, Clare, Armagh, Galway, especially particularly if it's Derry Armagh, you'd imagine they'll bring savage crowds. Cavan will bring a big crowd to Croke Park, and Westmeath will bring a big crowd to Croke Park. We will get behind the team. So it promises to be a very good occasion on the 9th of July,
Yeah, Colm says here, Tailteann Cup winners maybe should get placed into senior quarterfinals next year. Might give teams even more of a reason to go and try to win it. What would be your thoughts on that? I mean,
I don't know about that.
Yeah, we see the format obviously in hurling with the John McDonough. What would be your thoughts?
Well, I like the way the John McDonough works in the sense that the winners of the competition do get a chance in a quarter final. And I think this year, if you were to give Cavan or Westmeath a chance in a quarter final, they'd have a half a chance of winning it, particularly if it was against one of the qualifier winners as opposed to the provincial champions. Because as mentioned earlier, if Westmeath or Cavan got a chance at Clare or Cork in particular, you'd fancy your chances of winning. Now, that's not stated to be favourites, and but they would have a chance of beating either of those counties. And then they probably would lose either of them, but still, they still have a chance, And I think I don't like the way in hurling that they give the winners and the runners up a chance. I think that's a bit excessive, but I wouldn't mind seeing a winner getting a chance into the All-Ireland series, because then the Tailteann Cup teams would still be very much in the championship. Do you know that type of way? Now, I suppose the counter to that is, if that was to happen, could we potentially see a situation where a team deliberately drops to the Tailteann Cup to have a better chance to get into the All-Ireland quarterfinals? You know, type of now that stuff could be known to happen, but I'm not sure how it's going to work. I don't know what I'd be in favour of giving them an automatic quarterfinal place, but I do think it's a good idea that the winners of the Tailteann Cup are guaranteed a place in the All-Ireland series for the following year, regardless of their league position.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that as well. I think at the end of the day, you win the Tailteann Cup, there definitely should be some sort of incentive of it, and maybe another incentive is you get to play a provincial final at home or something of that respects, or maybe something that could be arranged around that. Now, obviously, the GAA would probably never do that to be perfectly honest, but it would certainly be something that I'd be interested in. But look, listen, Conor, much appreciated you jumping on. I suppose who would you say has been your player of the weekend? I suppose we'll go football, hurling.
It's a tricky one. I suppose we'll do one of each. Hurling, I suppose, for his second half performance, I'm going to say Shane O'Donnell. I thought he was majestic against Wexford when the tough fight got going for Clare. And football between the four Tailteann Cup clubs, sure, we'll give it to one of the Westmeath lads for the sake of John Heston. I think is a footballer. He's just a super footballer, and he'd probably go down as Westmeath's best ever player. So I'd say John Heston probably. I'm going to give him the footballer of the week. I think out with the 2 games he was very impressive for Westmeath. I think Pat Spillane, to be fair, for Sligo had a great game too. So I'll go with John Heston though.
Yeah, interesting take. Better than Desi Dolan.
Well, look, I'm not going to go comparing players at the moment, but Heston just is absolutely gifted, And at the kind of the Westmeath team now, nobody's going to argue it's as strong as that team in 2004, but that 2004 team obviously had brilliant players. Two of Westmeath's best ever players standing on the sideline yesterday with Desi Dolan and John Keane as selectors, and I suppose a lot of lads could make a valid claim. But I think at the moment Heston just pure natural ability, gifted as a footballer, and really very, and he has delivered on the big occasions to Westmeath. I suppose most notably probably the game against Meath in 2015, which was one of Westmeath's best ever results. So one of the best anyway, if not the best. John Heston has to go down with that bracket,
Yeah, I'd probably go for Aaron Shanahan as hurler of the week. I know he came off the bench, but I think the impact he made was
super game.
It was so key for Clare turning around. I mean, scoring 1-2, and I thought Roland O'Toole was very good for Westmeath, so I'd give it to him. But yeah, look, listen, Conor, much appreciated. Appreciating you coming on.
Thanks very much, Aaron. No problem at all. Thanks for having me.